People ask me how I came to be here in this spot, talking to a bunch of strangers about leadership. Did I grow up wanting to be a leadership coach? Was I the one that Barbie, Ken, and G.I. Joe always came to for group therapy? While the other girls were pretending to be Cinderella and dressing up in nice ball gowns and glass slippers, did I have the power suit and the pumps on? Not even close. In fact, if you had seen me as a kid growing up, you never would have put me here. So you're thinking it probably was some catastrophic event, like I climbed Mount Everest and I got stuck in a snowy blizzard and I survived for a week on nothing but a Snickers and a Diet Coke. Not exactly. The turning point in my life came in 7th grade civics class in the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. My turning point came in the form of a rough, tough, bald football coach who taught civics with such passion that if you sat in the front row, you were in grave danger of getting splattered when the sweat and the spit started flying. He'd storm over here and he'd make some important point about the judicial system, and then he'd stomp across the room and he'd make another important point about respect. I don't know how he kept that toothpick in the corner of his mouth the entire time. I don't know how he did it. Coach was old school on the football field and in the classroom. And we all had a little bit of fear when we walked into that class. And he probably thought he was just an average teacher, 7th grade civics, probably thought he'd never be known beyond the confines of our small town. However, he was anything but average. He was a leader in every sense of the word, and he probably had no idea. So which one was I? Remember that girl in school who did everything right? That perky little one in pink who sat in the front row and raised her hand excitedly for every question, ready to wield her lip smacker's lip gloss in any emergency? Yeah, that was not me. Actually, look behind her to the second row, to that tomboy wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, smelling like cigarettes, with a flask of vodka in her book bag and an armful of bracelets she had stolen from Pomida the day before. Yeah. Well, her mother had died, and her father wasn't quite there. Add a mean stepmother to the mix, and that completed the whole fairy tale gone wrong picture that unfortunately was my life. I was 13, and I was headed down a dangerous road. And the last place I wanted to be was in civics class. And the last person I wanted to hear from that day was some sweaty bald dude who was, pretending he cared about us. And the last thing I expected was for my life to be changed. It's funny how you can look back at those moments in your life when everything changed. When it seemed like the universe just reached out and smacked you in the forehead with a message. And that's what it was like. That message that day, for me, was delivered from Coach Mestelle. On an ordinary day in 7th grade civics class with the ever-present toothpick hanging out of the corner of his mouth, that day when he looked me right in the eye and said, "Nothing and no one else determines your life. Your friends don't determine your life. Your parents don't determine your life. Your past doesn't determine your life. You determine your life. You and you alone. Your choices determine your future." It sounds corny, because it was like a scene from a movie. I kid you not. It was as if time had just suspended long enough for me to be struck by those words. Because I don't remember anything he said in class before that, and I don't remember a word he said after that. I just remember my face getting flush and my eyes stinging with tears, and I was holding my breath because I thought, how does he know about me? And I knew that I was never going to be the same, and I wasn't. I walked out of that classroom, and I felt like I'd been freed from a cage, and I started making different choices. I didn't know it came down to just my choices. And almost overnight, I went from failing to straight A's, from skipping class and going to detention to playing sports and being on the school newspaper. I went from not even wanting to live to being excited about my future. That was 25 years ago. And to this day, every time someone thanks me for helping them in their life, I say a silent thank you for Coach Mestelle. Because he's the one that taught me we all have the power and potential to change lives. We're all leaders, and it starts with our choices. A lot of people wonder, whatever happened to Coach Mestelle? Well, several years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, I wrote him a letter, and I thanked him. And I shared with him how he literally saved my life. And I tried to connect with him on the phone, and you know how that goes. We just never could catch up with one another. And then about a year ago, I shared the story with a group of my peers at a National Speakers Association meeting, and I was inspired to call him one more time. And I walked out and went to my car and sat in there, and I called him. And this time he answered, and he sounded exactly the same as he did 25 years ago. And I sat there on my cell phone and I said, "Coach, it's your #1 fan." I said, "Your ears must have been burning because I just got done talking to a group of people and telling them about how you saved my life." And he laughed off my compliments. I could just see his bald head turning red. And then he said something that I'll never forget. He said, "Well, I don't think I helped you as much as you helped me." He went on to share with me that he had, several years ago when I sent that letter, he had been going through a really tough time in his life, one of the most difficult times in his life. He had been recovering from a major surgery, and on her way to see him, his mother was killed in a car accident. And he said it was one of the darkest times in his life. And then one day my letter came. And he said that when he read the words in my thank you letter, that it was like a fog had lifted. And he got up off the couch and he started living again. I was dumbfounded, and of course I'm bawling, sitting in my car, tears all over my face, and I had no idea that a little tomboy from nowhere, Wisconsin, could have such an impact on someone that I thought was larger than life. I didn't even know what to say. And that's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do. That's why I'm standing here in this spot today, talking to you about leadership, because Coach Mestelle was the one to teach me about leadership. We all have that power to change lives. And sometimes we need a little push, and others, like me, need a good kick in the rear end. And, you know, now I get to be called coach. I get to step into the shoes of my great mentor and remind you that nothing and no one else determines your life. Your friends don't determine your life. Your parents don't determine your life. Your past doesn't determine your life. You do. You alone. And your choices determine your future. I'm Cathy Maday with Wingspan Coaching Corporation, where we provide powerful tools for leaders. When you're ready to get more out of yourself and more out of your team, give us a call. Thank you.